Ladies and gents, welcome to episode 2 of the Underground Kings podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jason Sullivan. Jason, how are you today?
What's up, man? How you doing? Thanks
Doing
for
well.
having me. Appreciate being here.
Yes, sir. Might have to crank up that mic close to you. There you go. So how you been, man?
Can't complain, brother. Life is good.
Yes, sir.
Life is good.
So this is going to be a killer episode.
Yes. No
It's going to be a
doubt.
killer episode.
No
So
doubt.
let's go ahead and kick things off with how I met you. So I moved here to South Carolina, and we actually met in the sauna at the gym.
Yes, we did. It's actually funny that you say that because I meet a lot of people in the sauna. So, yeah, it's definitely a good place to do business.
All right. So yeah, we met in the sauna, and you got my contact information.
That's right.
And found out I run a digital marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit me up that next day. We met up. You said, "Let's get to work," and it was that simple. You know,
no doubt.
we've been working ever since. Took a little hiatus here, but we're zoned back in. We're back to work. Why don't you give everybody a little bit of rundown as far as where you're at now, and then just a light work on where you're at now, and then let's go back into time and see how you got there.
No doubt. So basically where I'm at right now is most of my focus is on generating revenue and basically creating more income. That's where I'm at in my life. Starting businesses, buying real estate, doing stuff like that gives me passive income that, gives me the life that I have and, build on the life that I want. So that's where I'm at right now. Things are going very well. I have some new projects going on, looking into some new real estate. So I really can't complain on life, man. Life is very good today.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about kind of where you come from.
Okay.
Let's talk about how you got to where you're at. The journey along the way. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay, so the beginning is basically I come from a middle class, I would say middle class or lower middle class neighborhood in Glendale, Queens, New York. And my father was a court officer. My mother was a bartender. And, I dealt with a lot of stuff in life as a result of things that my parents went through. And so my life, I have 4 brothers. At the time, I had 3 because my father had a child as he got older. But it was chaotic, man. It was crazy, you know what I mean? And the neighborhood that I came from, it was a good, relatively good neighborhood. I got to experience a lot of stuff as a child that I think a lot of these kids are missing out on. Going out, hanging out all night with your friends, playing in the street, doing things that were actually fun. On the other hand, though, I definitely experienced a lot more and realized a lot more than, what was going on in my own home as opposed to what was going on with my friends. I definitely had a lot of struggles that a lot of people didn't realize, and I definitely dealt with a lot of things that I would say a lot of people didn't deal with at that point in time.
So, give into some more of kind of what that looked like. So I know that you had a bit of a darker period of time.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable with diving on into that, let's.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's I want to be respectful to everybody because I don't want to try to make anybody look bad or anything like that. It's definitely a part of my family history, and it needs to be spoke about. But both my parents suffered from drug addiction. And as a result of their drug addiction, there was a lot of chaos in the home. You know what I mean? Just a lot of, violence, a lot of craziness. But there were a lot of good times at the same time, And, dealing with stuff like that as a young child, I definitely didn't make anything easier. You know what I mean? I rebelled completely, and I was violent. I was aggressive. I was just a wild kid, and I was uncontrollable, and as a result of that, I caught a lot more flack from, my parents than I think some of my other brothers because I provoked them more, you know what I mean? So I pushed the button more, if something wasn't going the way that I liked or I didn't get what I wanted, I literally pushed buttons and I caused a lot more havoc and a lot more trouble. My pops, as a result of things that I've done, was up at school a lot, He had to sit, through classes with me because, I was always getting into fights. So just a lot of chaos and commotion as a result of that. So I also spent a lot of time on the street with my friends, and when I was a child, they called me the Wanderer. And the reason that is because nobody could ever find me when I was a kid. From the age of like 6 and 7, I was already out. And all the kids that I hung out with were older. So they used to find it entertaining to have this young kid with them. And they would make me rob, and they would make me hit people, and I would do it willingly. I'm like, yeah, no doubt, like, let's rock and roll. They were like, go hit that kid. And I'm like, all right, cool. And the kid would be like, let's say 5 foot, and I'm like 3 foot nothing. You know what I mean? I'd jump up, slap him, whatever. It didn't really matter. But that was my upbringing. So I experienced a lot at a very young age.
Right. That's intense, man. That's a lot.
It was.
I mean, that's really a lot to unpack. And then, so you kind of went through this kind of area of your life. You went through your childhood and kind of things like that, just kind of trying to navigate and get on through, doing what you got to do. What did the next chapter look like? Because I know you started getting into business. You started making some moves.
Yeah, so I was definitely unconventional in my ways. You know what I mean? Like, my brothers got jobs. And my pops was like, if you're not going to go to school, get a job. And I wasn't one for working. So I decided at a very young age to start getting into the drug game. And, I would start with selling weed. I graduated to selling ecstasy and, whatever I can get my hands on. But I always hustled. You know what I mean? Like, that was my thing. I always hustled. No matter what was going on, I always found means to make money. And it wasn't legit. Like, it was never legit. And my brothers would be like, yo, why can't you just go get a regular job? I remember one time my brother's like, go work in McDonald's. And I looked at him, I'm like, nah, man, I have my pride. You know what I mean? And I did it like slapping my chest, like, I have my pride. I'm not going to work in McDonald's. I'd rather sell weed and make money selling weed. But I was always involved in some kind of hustle and some kind of scheme that could make me money. You know what I mean? And I did that from a very young age. I mean, I literally started selling pot probably when I was like 11, 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you make that shift? When did you make the shift from more or less legitimate business to really just to start, because you worked on Wall Street, is that right?
Well, so I worked with a lot of guys from Wall Street. And as my story progressed, I personally got caught up in my own problems. You know what I mean? My own drug addiction. I got caught up in basically, criminal shit that I was getting arrested for. So from the ages of like 16 to 23, that was my period of chaos. You know what I mean? And from that time frame, there were many instances where, like, people thought I was going to die, plain and simple. You know what I mean? Or I was going to end up in jail for a very long time. And, there was like a funny kind of thing that was going on in my house at the time. I was living with my brother. And every time my mother would call, she'd be like, hey, where's your brother? And my brother would be like, oh, he's probably in jail. And sure enough, every time my brother said that, I was locked up. You know what I mean? So I was always going through the system, always catching charges, always catching cases, and there were always drug-related cases, something that had to do with drugs in general, and then drug-related issues. You know what I mean? And so that really just spiraled, and I really spiraled out of control. And it was a dark, dark period in time. I had to go through a lot of hard lessons. I had to learn a lot of things the hard way as a result of the things that I've done. And it was just miserable. I can't tell you how miserable it was, But so as that period progressed, I always had this idea. Now, mind you, I dropped out of school. And I dropped out of the 9th grade. Really, I dropped out in junior high school. But they passed me through because of, No Child Left Behind, George Bush, and all that good stuff. And once I got to high school, I was like, this ain't for me. I'm dropping out. And, again, I'm always selling drugs. And I had a routine when I was a kid that I would basically be on drugs for a while, living reckless. And then I'd stop drugs. And I'd stop drugs. I'd get my weight up. I'd work out. Life would be good. And then I'd sell drugs. So I was always caught up in the cycle. And, I would come across people and they'd be like, yo, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, what do you mean? They'd be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And they'd be like, when are you going to grow up? When are things going to change? And I couldn't grasp that concept at the time, because for me, when I was a kid, all I understood was where I came from, right? And I know people have a hard time comprehending that or thinking about it in that context, but I'm like, this is my world. You know what I mean? Like the radius of my neighborhood is my world. I don't know anything outside of that, And so I had a hard time understanding at that point what they're talking about. Like what more is to life than what I'm doing? You know what I mean? And there were people that would come into my life and that would challenge me. And it wasn't until I got into a relationship with a particular person that really kind of started to challenge my ideas. And that person was like, don't you want more out of life? And I'm like, well, what more is there? You know what I mean? At the time, I'm selling drugs. I'm doing my thing. I'm looking good. Everything is going good. And I'm like, what more is there? And this person had a 5-year plan. And I'm like, 5-year plan? Like, what's that? Like I couldn't grasp that concept. Like a 5-year plan? I lived day to day. You know what I mean? Minute to minute. That was my life. And so it started to make me think. And again, I didn't go to high school, and I started to think about college. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, this is possible. And I went back to get my GED, and I got my GED. And my little brother at the time did the same thing. And then I went back to college. And I remember my first semester in college, I ended with a 3.8 GPA. And I'm like, okay, like that's cool, And that started my journey into transitioning into legit stuff. And I started to kind of get the idea of like what I want out of life. Where do I want to go, So that's kind of where it started. And, things started to take hold.
Can you remember if there was like one rock bottom moment that stood out to you that drove you to want to go back and get your GED and pursue kind of a new life for yourself?
There were a few. So the GED thing was, like I said, I was dating a girl who was, came from a different background and kind of challenged everything that I believed. You know what I mean? And at the time was like, don't you want more? And I was like, yeah, but how do I get there? Because I always felt like I did want more, but I never knew how to get out of the bubble that I was living in. You know what I mean? Like it was a constant cycle, and I was like, this is my life, So when that person started to teach me, I started to take hold on that and actually follow suit. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is what I'm going to try. So I started studying for my GED and then, eventually taking the test and getting it. And that was a pivotal moment in me deciding, like, I'm going to go back to college, So,
very cool. Yeah. Do you still have a relationship with that person?
No.
Okay.
But that person played a significant factor and definitely in my life.
That's a cool thing, man.
Yeah.
So following you kind of finishing college, you come out of college, come out of the other end, you're kind of on this new venture in life. Life probably looks and feels a hell of a lot different.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm sure the audience is going to be, what the fuck was next?
Okay, so let me give you how I ended the lifestyle that I was living in. So, mind you, again, right, I was always getting arrested. I was always going to jail. I was always catching cases. You know what I mean? And at the age of 23, basically what happened was I ended up ODing. And, I was partying all night. I was, doing my thing, and I was on my way back home. And after a night of partying, I decided to drink a bottle of NyQuil. And I drank that bottle of NyQuil, and as I'm driving, my left arm starts to go numb. And my heart starts to cramp, and I'm like, yo, something doesn't feel right. So I go home, and I lay in bed. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. And as I'm laying in bed, I'm having trouble breathing, and my heart is continually cramping. And I was like, yo, I'm going to die. Like, I'm straight up going to die. And basically, I roll off my bed. And I get to my little brother's room, and I bang on the door, and my little brother opens the door, and I tell him, listen, you need to take me to the hospital or I'm going to die. So, of course, he picks me up. He takes me, rushes me to the hospital, and they do their thing. They put me on oxygen. They stabilize me. And what happened was, as a result of partying all night and doing the NyQuil, basically it caused a cardiac issue. You know what I mean? And that's what was cramping my heart. And this is like the emotional aspect of it, again, because I was so heavily into drug addiction. So I get home from the hospital, and my older brother, who I don't necessarily have the greatest relationship with, when I was a kid, I provoked a lot. So he was, he definitely did his thing and whooped my ass, came to the house. And when he came to the house, basically we went for a walk, and he just literally said words to me that I've heard numerous times. But he turned around and he said, listen, I don't want to bury my little brother. And those words struck a chord at that particular time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it was, but I was tired, and I was like, I'm done. You know what I mean? I know I can't live like this anymore. I know I don't want to do this anymore, and something's got to give. And my uncle at the time, who just came out of prison, was like, yo, you're going where I just came from. So you need to change. Something needs to change. And sure enough, I decided at that particular moment in time I was going to go away. And I went away before when I was a kid. It didn't take hold because I thought, I would just smoke weed and drink, but that never lasts. And, I went away at that time, and I think I was just ready to receive what I needed to hear. And I decided to get clean. So 23 is like the pivotal moment in my life where things started to change. And, I got clean. I started doing the right thing. And, I got involved in a particular program. And that's when my life really started to change, and I started to do the right thing. And, I got back into work. I was working construction at the time, and I was in college. So I would work from 6 a.m. I would go to work. I wasn't the greatest worker, but I'd work from 6 a.m. to like 3 o'clock. I'd take a break, for 2 hours, and then I'd go to school from 6 to 10. And I did that for quite some time. And that kind of started the journey, you know what I mean, of things that I did.
How long have you been clean?
It's going on 13 years.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
To come from that and really just, so that was the turning point where you clean.
Oh, without a doubt.
Completely through and through from that point on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, right, so I have some interesting stories in that regard too, where when I got clean, it was very difficult for me to give up the lifestyle, right? Because that was always my issue, was the lifestyle. And being around, being in the neighborhood, being a part of, being involved, you know what I mean? And always feeling like I'm going to miss something. Like, I got to be around. I'm going to miss something. And, I thought in the beginning, like, I can help people. What I realized very quickly was I can't help anybody. You know what I mean? And we preach something in the program that attraction, not promotion. You know what I mean? Let them see what I'm doing as opposed to me going out and trying to preach it. And so I would go back to my neighborhood. I'd try to help somebody out. One kid I tried to help out, tried to kill himself. I went back another time, another kid that I was trying to help out dropped a rock in my car. Like all these journeys that I had to learn, all these instances. Another friend of mine was going to jail at the time. I ended up, trying to take him to a meeting, but I walked in the house and there's drugs everywhere. So I'm like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm putting myself in jeopardy trying to help people that I care about, but I'm going to kill myself. You know what I mean? I'm going to get caught up in this game again as a result of things that they're doing because I'm around. Because, like the saying goes, if you hang out in a barber long enough, you're going to get a haircut. And that's facts. You know what I mean? That's facts. So, I had to stop doing those things. So I started to, focus on my life. I stopped going back to my neighborhood. And I started to really focus on college and do the right thing.
That night with that NyQuil and you kind of overdosed and then going to the hospital, was the NyQuil thing, I got to ask, was that like a ploy to get high or
no? So
or
basically,
was that
the NyQuil was a ploy to get to go to sleep.
Really?
Yeah, because I was so up, I wanted to come down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was all the way up here, and I'm like, yo, I need to go to bed. So I took the NyQuil to go to bed.
Was that a regular thing too?
It wasn't a regular thing. I rather, drink heavily to go to sleep. But it was just something that was on hand, and I'm like, all right, let me just do this.
And you're not from that point, that moment we talked about, that rock bottom moment, talking to your brother. You haven't just been clean from the drugs ever since then. That point, right? You don't drink.
Oh no! I don't drink. I don't smoke weed. Nothing. Yeah,
Nothing.
I don't mess with any mind or mood altering substances.
Okay.
And the reason being is because I like them. You know what I mean? So my issue is I understand that, I was never a big alcoholic, but I know that eventually if I do alcohol, then I'm going to do something else. You know what I mean? So I know that once that door opens, that I'm going to walk through, and all the other issues that come with it, I'm going to walk into. So I'd rather just not walk in the door at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
At those levels of extremes when it comes to addiction, I mean, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you drink a little bit, it alters your mind, and then all of a sudden, it's not as big of a deal to do something else.
I think for a lot of people, the reason people have such a hard time getting clean and changing is because their lack of acceptance towards that. It's like, wow, I can't drink a beer ever again, or I can't smoke a blunt ever again. And the reality is I don't look that far. You know what I mean? Like, I don't look at life and say, oh, man, when I'm 60 years old, I can't sit down and smoke a blunt. I just think about it in the day. Like, I keep the shit in the day. You know what I mean? Like, for today, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to do anything that's going to put me in jeopardy.
So it really, like, from day one, it's one day at a time?
Yeah.
And you have to look at it that way?
I think life is meant to be looked at in that way. Because the reality is that when it comes to anything, right, and I'll put this in a general sense of business and life and the gym, is the reason why we fail and the reason why we quit is because we look at the mountain, right, as opposed to just walking the hill. You know what I mean? And when you're looking at the mountain and you see at the mountaintop is so high, you're like, man, I'm never going to get there. But the reality is when you start walking the hill, it's those steps that bring you to the top. You know what I mean? So when you start focusing on the small steps, eventually you're going to get to the top of the mountain. So if I don't look at the big picture and I don't look at, where I'm going to be in 5 years or 10 years or 50, whatever the case may be, and I can focus just on the daily tasks that I have, that's what brought me the successes that I have. You know what I mean? Is because I'm like, all right, let me accomplish what I need to get accomplished for today, and I'll worry about tomorrow.
All right, so let's delve into Occupy Wall Street, because I know that you kind of had a bit of a role to play there.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's dive into that.
Okay, so 2011, right? 2011 comes around, and the Egyptian revolution happens. And at this time, like, there's a lot of social movements going on and political movements going on throughout the world. And so 2011 comes and Occupy Wall Street springs up. So at that time, I'm in college. I'm studying political science and economics. And I feel the need to get involved. I'm like, I have to get involved. Now, mind you, I am a old school, I would say, classical Democrat, right? And a lot of people say, that's baloney, but that's the way that I fall. I believe in unionism and stuff like that. So I decided to get involved. And at the time I get involved, that's when I met my current wife. And one of my first dates with my wife was Occupy Wall Street. I'm like, do you want to come to a protest with me? Now, my wife is, she's a doll. She's a very free spirit. She's kind. She's like a little hippie. So she's like, okay. And so we end up going down there. And thank God she takes a little bit longer to get ready, because what happened was, she took like a half hour extra, right? The protest started at 8, let's say, and we got there at 8:30 because she was, doing what women do. And as a result of that, there were 700 people that got arrested on the bridge. That was the Brooklyn Bridge arrest. That was one of the first protests that I went to. And because we were late, we didn't get to be on the bridge. So we didn't get arrested, which was like a great experience. But at that time, excuse me, at that time, that really started to spark my political interests. You know what I mean? And we were definitely, when Occupy Wall Street first started, it was definitely, and again, I don't know if this is proper terminology nowadays, but it was a melting pot of political ideas, right? You had everybody from libertarians to communists to socialists to tax movements. Everybody came about, you know, and we believed that we can change the political structure and that we wanted to go after the banks at the time because of the things that they did, you know, with the mortgages and, you know, all the bank stuff that was related to the economic collapse in 2008 and how they got away with a lot. Now, that sparked into me starting a community center, me starting things for, you know, Hurricane Sandy, and me getting involved heavily in politics. You know, and at the time I was going to run for a council seat where I lived on Long Island, and that really got me politically motivated. Now, as time went on, things started to change, and, you know, I started to feel a little apathetic towards politics.
How so?
Well, I took up the mantra, if you can't beat them, join them. And I realized that because there were so many different political ideas going on, that there would be no cohesion. And because there would be no cohesion, it would be very hard for us to change the political landscape. You know what I mean? And it started to become something that I didn't agree with. And so I started to stray away. And I said to myself, well, okay, I understand that as a, you know, poor white kid from the suburbs at the time, I can't go in there and change something. But what does change political landscapes? So I started to think in that concept. And what changes political landscapes is finances, money. So that's I said to myself, like, this is it. I'm just going to go and, you know, become wealthy, and then I can do whatever I want.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's how the game is played.
That's how you, I mean, as far as the way I look at it, you know, money is power, and it gives you the power to make a difference if you want to. Correct. In a good way or a bad way. Yeah. And it tends to amplify, you know, the individual's root intentions. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate reality, is that money has such an influence on life. You know what I mean? And money has such an influence on people, and money has such an influence on politics, that with the right amount of money, you can get anything done. You know what I mean? And that's the facts. That's the reality. You know? So as much as, you know, we want to stomp our feet and go out there and protest, you know, I'm all about it, you know, and I enjoyed a lot of it. I had a great deal of fun doing it, you know what I mean, provoking cops and having a great time. But the reality is that at some point, you know, money gets involved, and those politicians are bought and paid for, and that's just facts. Eventually, you know, you kind of come to terms with the fact that if you want to win the game, you got to play by the rules. Yeah. And so, you know, you realize, you know, the rules are, you know, it's the rule of money. You know, you needed to acquire money, financial security for yourself, and then continue to compound that. And that's going to give you the power to actually invoke change. Correct. Do what you want to do, give you the freedom. Yeah. So following Occupy Wall Street, how did that kind of lead into the next chapter of your life? So at the time I was working construction. I was in the roofing union. And what was going on was I wasn't a good roofer, right? And for everybody listening, I'm not mechanically inclined. Really. You give me a hammer and a nail, and I'm putting holes in the wall. So I'm not that guy, right? And, you know, mind you, my brothers and stuff like that, they're very talented. They're very mechanically inclined. They're good with tools. And, you know, they're union elevated guys, union iron worker. I don't have that ability, you know? And so my concept was always work smarter, not harder. And while I was in the union, my aspiration was, like, I'm going to be in the politics of the union. So I was going for delegate and stuff like that. And, you know, while I'm doing this, I ended up meeting somebody that was in basically the commodities game, selling collectibles. And, you know, was like, listen, why don't you come and try it out, give it a shot? And I'm like, nah, I'm good, you know. I'm in the construction business. I'm making all right money, you know. So I didn't really entertain it. And as time progressed, you know, I seen the writing on the wall with the union. You know, I'd be laid off 4 or 5 months out of the year. Some by choice, but, you know, really by a lack of work. And I realized, like, this is not what I want. Let me try something different.
So eventually I went in and tried it. And the first day that I'm on the job, it was a, cold calling business. You get on the phone and you start dialing and go from there. And I made a sale the first day. And I'm like, okay, like that's cool. Like, let me see where this goes. And I stepped back a little bit and I'm like, you know what, let me focus on what I'm doing with college and work. And then eventually I linked up with somebody else that brought me to another company. And once I was at my final year of apprenticeship for construction to get my union card, and basically went from doing that to saying, you know what, let me try out this business. I was laid off and I said, let me try out this business. And once I got into the business, I loved it.
So you kind of, you got into sales, and did you even know or have any general idea that you'd have a gist for that kind of thing? No. So it was really like you were completely new to sales in general.
Yeah, I was green.
Okay.
I actually had a problem in the beginning because I don't know if you could tell now, but my accent, because I was from Queens, we have that Queens, Brooklyn accent, right? Which is a heavy Italian accent. And we use our hands. We're very animated. So in the beginning, it was very difficult because people would legit say to me, like, what are you going to do? Come here and, whatever, some kind of connotation that's, reflected on that kind of lifestyle particular to those neighborhoods. So I'd be like, what? What do you mean? And I'd get offended because I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to make a sale. So I had to learn how to speak correctly. But I had no idea what I was getting into. My boss at the time used to say, don't think with your pockets, right? Because I used to say to myself, who's going to spend $5, $10, $20, $30,000 with me on the phone? Who's going to do that? I'm not going to do that. You call me, I'll hang up on you. But what I realized very quickly was there were people that do that. And I started to grasp that and started to accomplish that. And once I started to accomplish that, it was on. You know what I mean? Like I went for the gusto.
How many calls were you making a day?
Probably between like 300 and 500.
300 and 500?
Yeah, at my best. You know what I mean? I was pounding the phone.
Did you have any, did you really just have, you had the phone on the counter and you were just picking up, dialing?
Yeah.
Were there any ways that you found that enabled you to make phone calls faster? Any little tricks of the trade?
No.
Just picking up?
No, just
putting
dial
it down?
the numbers. That's
okay.
it. Pick up, dial. Pound the phone. Somebody hangs up, get on to the next one.
How many hours were you working?
Probably about, I would say about 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day.
Okay, so nothing too crazy.
No, it wasn't crazy. See, the thing with the sales game is that you burn out, right? So what I learned very quickly was a 7-hour day on the phone was equivalent to an 8-hour day on the roof because I was exhausted. I would go home shot. You know what I mean? I'd be very tired because it's a mental game. You know what I mean? You're using your mind all day. So it was definitely a strain, and it was definitely exhausting.
Money was good?
So this is what happened. This is how my career started. When I started in the business, like I hit the ground running, right? I was trained by a gentleman who worked for Stratton Oakmont, who was an ex-stockbroker, who actually would yell at me, right? Feeding me lines as I was yelling at the client, right? And there were a lot of times where he was doing that, and the client would still buy while he was doing that, knowing full well he's doing that. You know what I mean? But because his lingo was so good, I closed the deals. So when I hit the ground running, I was very successful as what we call a new account opener. And, I was doing great. Life was going good. And then somewhere along the line, like I smashed right into the wall. And I felt like I couldn't sell something to save my life. You know what I mean? And the thing about me is that I like my back against the wall. You know what I mean? For some particular reason, I do very well with my back against the wall. And in those periods of time, I rise to the occasion. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I'm not giving up. I'm going for it. And there were weeks where I went home negative, where I owed the company money. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what's going on here? And because I was relentless, I literally would go in my boss's office and just pound the phone. And I eventually started to pick the business back up and get clients again. And then what separated me was I would tell the other guys, if they had clients that weren't selling, give them to me. I'll sell them. And then I did that. And that's when I started to be observed as a broker. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not stopping. And eventually, I worked my way up to a broker, and I started reselling clients, and then eventually, I worked my way up to a manager for that company.
When you talk about that having your back against the wall, those kind of moments where it's kind of they'll make or break you, where you have no option but to succeed.
Yeah,
I really have this belief that we can learn to kind of generate that environment, generate that mentality ourselves.
Without a doubt.
Without even being in that situation. You could be financially stable,
Yeah.
You're doing well, but still be able to put yourself mentally in that place.
Yeah.
If it works for you. Some people, they cripple and fall into the corner, and it's, it's more fear, and it's definitely more negative for them. But yeah, I find that very interesting. Okay, so how did we'll go towards kind of the tail end of you kind of doing this sales job. And you mentioned you had a guy from Stratton Oakmont.
Yep.
Which for anybody that doesn't know, and I'm sure most people do, that was Jordan Belfort.
Correct.
Which very heavy hitter. Now, was some of the stuff he was teaching you, that was stuff he was getting directly from Jordan?
Directly, correct.
That's fucking nuts.
It was all came down to straight line pitches, which is Jordan Belfort's mantra.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Use the straight line.
Have you read his book?
I have not. I've read a lot of his stuff, but I haven't read his book.
It's a good one.
I feel like I know him.
Yeah, right.
I got to experience a lot of stuff that he's taught. So, yeah.
Well, next time you come by, I'll bring the book. I got the book.
Cool.
It talks a lot about the straight line selling, but he also talks about this anchoring methodology.
Okay.
It was weird too in the book. He talks about using those the smelling salts for like lifting.
Okay.
Like you crack them, you smell them, and then they power lifters use them a lot. He talks about he used to use those, and he uses them to this day to set what he calls anchor points.
Okay.
And I thought it was very odd, but he'll kind of put himself mentally in a place, or let's say he closes a sale. He closes a really big sale.
Yeah.
He'll go have a moment to himself with one of these smelling salts, and he'll do that. And he's done it so many times from these big successful deals. And then what he'll do is he's coming up to a big meeting. He's about to go in and pitch them on the sale, try and close them. And he'll smell one of those smelling salts, and it'll put him in a frame of mind that he was in when he just closed a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Jordan Belfort is a little, no offense to Jordan, but he's a little out there.
Oh, yeah.
He's a wild dude.
You got to be I mean, obviously some of the shit he did wasn't necessarily a good thing. But overall, I mean, to do what he did, you have to be a different breed.
Yeah, and the thing that I look at and I have to observe with him is that he didn't do much different than what a lot of stockbrokers do.
He just got caught.
That's why the stock market and the stockbroker game is different today than it was. Jordan Belfort is basically the poster boy of things that you shouldn't do. But there are many guys that got arrested, that got in trouble as a result of things that were going on during that time. And stockbrokers, basically, they would look for ways to make money, right? You have to make a rip. So in order to make a rip, you have to make a sale or make a purchase, right? So that's how you make your money. So even if a guy's in a good stock, they'll take him out just to make a rip. They'll put him in another stock just to make a rip. And that's a lot of the reasons why the stock game is what it is today with the retail stocks and stuff like that, is because of what stockbrokers were doing. And these guys would get sued for millions of dollars. Insane amount of money because they would, they want to make $40,000 this month. Okay, boom. Let me take a guy out of a comfortable blue chip stock and put him into something that's a little volatile so I can make some money. And that's how the game went.
He really just ended up it was just a scapegoat, really. Yeah. I mean, because like you said, everybody was doing it. Or a lot of people were doing the same thing he was doing.
No doubt about it.
Wow, that's crazy. And so this guy you were working with was kind of teaching you some of that straight line pitch stuff that he was learning directly from Jordan. Okay, so leading off the back end of this job, this sales job that you had, what was how did this lead you into your future ventures? Okay,
so I was basically blessed with being around people that thought about money. You know what I mean? And so that changed my concepts on money. And my boss at the time, both of them, one in particular, were very motivated. You know, my boss was an ex-stockbroker, and they were always thinking about bigger ventures. You know, they were talking about buying real estate, you know, getting involved in fixing flips and stuff like that. So that started to change my mindset on the things that I was doing, you know. And so eventually I ended up leaving the company and starting my own company. And, you know, I ended up starting my company. And when I started the company, I had a solid core guys. And, you know, I said in the beginning, I'm like, okay, because of what I learned from them, we're going to do it like this. We're going to make money. And as we make money, we're going to put money aside and we're going to buy real estate. That's going to be the goal, because we're going to retire at 40 and we're going to have properties that pay our bills. And in the beginning, my guys followed that. You know, they followed suit, and, you know, we did buy some real estate. But not everything goes as planned, you know. But one thing I'll say that separated me from everybody was when it came to money, because of my background, because I grew up poor, I didn't spend money. So I saved a lot of money, you know, and it was reflected in the things that I was doing, you know. And I remember one time I bought an $8 pair of jeans, and I came to work and I was excited because I bought an $8 pair of jeans. Now, mind you, I'm around guys that are wearing $10,000 watches, $15,000 watches, that are driving, you know, Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, all high-end stuff. And my boss he was pissed.
Really?
He's like, why don't you just go buy a $100 pair? You got the money, go buy it. You know, get out of here with that shit. Don't come to work with those jeans. And the reality is that I didn't have that need. You know what I mean? I didn't have that desire to look rich. I didn't have that desire to look wealthy. You know, like, I didn't care. I'll come to work with a Flash shirt on, you know, a comic shirt on, and a pair of jeans. I did not care. And it transpired one time where my boss was selling a boat, and I was the third top writer in the business, in his particular business. And he went to the first two top guys. One guy wasn't a real boat guy, and he went to the second top guy, and the second top guy's like, I don't have the money. At the time, the boat was like 20 grand. So my boss comes to me and he goes, listen, I'm selling my boat. I just want to give you an opportunity. Nonchalantly, like, probably didn't think that I would say yes. And I'm like, okay, how much? He goes, 20 grand. And I'm like, can I make money? And he goes, yeah. He goes, the boat's worth probably about 25, 30. So I thought about it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, yo, I'll be right back. So he's like, where you going? I'm like, I'm going to go to the bank. He's like, for what? I'm going to get the money. So sure enough, I went to the bank. I grabbed out 20 grand, probably grabbed a little extra, came back, threw 20 grand on the table. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, dude, you said I can make money, so I'm going to buy it. And he counted it out. It was probably like 21,000. He gave me 1,000 back. But that mindset is why I ended up doing very well. Because I would save, I wouldn't spend. If I made 2 grand, I saved 1,000. You know what I mean? And when I started my business, that's the way in which I approached things. Was like, I'm going to save money. I don't need everything to live. I'm going to live on a budget and go from there. And it started to prosper, and I started to, you know, become successful.
So you would kind of save your money and you'd wait for that opportunity. Correct. And it was always some kind of investment or some kind of, rather than buying the clothes, you were more interested in how you could make more money, basically.
Yeah, and again, right, so my guys, I was around guys that, I mean, some guys will make $5,000 a week, some guys will make $7,000 a week, and they'd still be broke. And I could never comprehend that mindset. You know what I mean? I didn't ask anybody for anything coming up. You know, I wouldn't ask anybody for anything. So because I wouldn't ask anybody for anything, I'd save money and did the right thing. But I could never comprehend making so much money and being broke. Like, that's not a part of my character.
See, what's so interesting to me is, you know, a lot of times we see exactly the opposite. You know, people coming from very humble beginnings, poverty. You know, you see a lot of these professional NFL players, you know, NBA players. They're, you know, the fact that, like, what is it, 60% of them go bankrupt after they retire because they don't know how to, they can't even fathom how to manage that kind of wealth.
Correct.
And they're spending beyond their means.
Correct.
So, you know, it's interesting to me, considering you kind of came from similar humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And yet you kind of had a totally different frame of mind of like, I finally have it and now I want to protect it.
Yeah, because I understood very quickly the value of money. You know what I mean? And I understood that I watched a lot of old timers when I was a kid on how they did well, you know? And these guys weren't flamboyant. They weren't, you know, out there. They didn't show a lot, but they were intelligent with money, you know? And they put money to work. And they did what they had to do, and they didn't care about the perception. I don't care necessarily how you look at me. You know, I want a comfortable life for me and my family. I want to build a legacy. You can look at me and say, that guy's a bum. Cool. I'm cool with that. You know, it doesn't bother me one iota. The reality is that what happens is guys make a lot of money, and they'll go from making $2,000, they'll live like they make $3,000. They'll make $3,000, they'll go like they make $5,000. And it continues like that. And they always think that, well, if I make more money, it's going to be good. That's not the way that it goes, actually. If you don't know how to manage money, if you don't respect the value of money, you're never going to learn how to manage. You can make $10,000 a week, doesn't matter. You'll spend $12,000 a week. You know, you'll start buying higher end toys. I had stockbrokers that I worked with that made $700,000 in a month, and they're broke. Why? Because they didn't care. You know, they'll take a plane to Vegas with prostitutes, and you know they'll party for a month and spend $300,000. They didn't care. That's not the way that I live.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you're currently invested in, as well as maybe some assets that you used to invest in that maybe you don't anymore? But
so right now I'm focused on basically passive income, focused on real estate, and I also am involved in a venture with trading cards. So I'm also a real estate agent as well.
Okay, let's break into the real estate first, and then we'll go into the trading card business.
Yeah. So I own property, and I'm just looking for more property to generate more income. Right now, the interest rates, I mean, I don't want to say the interest rates are high because they're really not. 5% is really not that high. It's kind of normal. The problem is that the real estate market is inflated as a result of all that capital that was printed. So I would say it's harder to make a nice income. The cap rates are lower, you know, where you're looking, you know, years ago you may have looked for 10, 12% cap rate. Now you're looking between 5 and 7, which is still, you know, it's still good money. But that's basically what I'm looking at now, looking at more property out here.
What kind of property are you invested in?
Duplexes.
Okay.
Yeah, duplexes, condos, you know, stuff like that.
Any commercial?
No, not yet.
Okay, so all on the residential rental side.
Yep.
Okay. How long have you been investing in real estate?
6 years.
6 years?
5 years.
And what drew you to that? Was it that passive, that kind of
retirement?
That's your retirement plan.
Yeah, because that was a part of the plan to retire at 40. So was having the passive income that I would collect every month on real estate properties.
Speaking of which, you're how old now?
36.
And you're not retired. Obviously, you work like a mule to this day.
Yeah.
As I know, but you know, you could if you wanted to.
Pretty much. I would say I wouldn't say I'm retired. I would say I'm coming at life in a different way. You know what I mean? Like I get to enjoy more, you know, and that's really what I wanted, you know, where I get to spend more time doing things that I like. So that's the life that I have today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So trading card business. Let's talk about that. I know that's kind of the newest venture.
Yeah. So that's actually pretty cool. So I ended up buying from an old investor of mine about 1 million trading cards. Everything from Pokemon cards to Star Wars cards to Garbage Pail Kids cards.
Is it 1 million?
Upwards of 1 million.
That's fucking unreal.
Yeah. So ultimately, I got involved. It was a shot in the dark, and I'm like, I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to see what happens. And I think, realistically, I made a very good investment. It's just time-consuming, inventorying, and cataloging, which is a lot of work. You know, we're talking about 40 years of somebody collecting and, you know, getting that down packed and then, you know, marketing and selling.
Okay.
But I already know, based on some of the things that I've already sold, it's good.
So what do some of the figures look like on some of these things? Because I know you're going through the process of getting some of the cards graded.
Yeah. So some of the, I mean, I had probably about 15, 20 boxes of just sealed cards. And they range anywhere from $50 to $1,000, $1,200 a box. And that's on just sealed boxes. We're talking about sealed Star Wars boxes, sealed X-Men boxes, sealed Harry Potter boxes, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of things that are part of my genre of things that I grew up during my childhood. You know what I mean? Things that I watched, Nightmare Before Christmas, Rugrats, Simpsons, all of this stuff. Like I have all of that kind of stuff sealed. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's, as of right now, like you were sending me some pictures the other day, you just got in a lot of these shipments. Was it about a week ago?
So I got the boxes in probably about a month ago.
A month ago?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're now just kind of figuring out where to put all of them.
Yeah. So I have a condo and then I have my house. My condo is pretty much stacked right now. And then my office in my house is pretty much stacked. And I still have a storage unit full of stuff.
How many boxes in total?
130.
130 boxes.
Yeah. We're not talking about small boxes either. We're talking about large boxes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the process for, because obviously we talked about, you get the cards graded,
Correct.
That can give you kind of a quality metric as far as how much they're worth.
Correct.
And then there's also, cards that you can just list in general, more generalized cards. But what does the process look like for you from receiving this shipment, pulling the boxes apart, getting the cards out? What's kind of the next couple of steps for you?
So the cataloging is probably the meat and potatoes. You know what I mean? Because that would give me an idea based on just having raw cards, how much they're worth. And then taking, siphoning through all the cards and taking the top-notch cards to get graded. You know what I mean? The cards of the best quality. And all cards are, pretty much all of the cards are near mint. This person kept the cards in impeccable condition.
And
so
do you have when looking through the cards and seeing which ones are worth taking to get graded, do you actually have the personal knowledge to identify these things, or do you have someone you consult with?
No, so that's also a part of my job, is to basically know and learn what I have. So the way that I'm looking at this business is no matter what happens, it's a success. The reason being is because now I just learned a different avenue of business. So no matter how I slice the pie, I just created a whole new skill set that I never had. So no matter what happens, even if this is, let's say, a flock or fluke, and I don't make money or I break even, well, now I know what I'm looking for. Now I know how to identify things. So when I go out and buy more, which I will, I know what I'm going to buy. You know what I mean? So no matter how I slice the pie, I'm going to do well.
And I can see the passion about it from you. This is obviously something that you've been passionate about since your childhood.
Yeah.
It's nostalgic.
Correct. Who wouldn't have fun selling things that you grew up on? You know what I mean? Looking at things that you watched and were raised on. Like I went to a card show over the weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I didn't bring a lot of stuff. I didn't look to sell anything. I just went and had a great time. And I went by myself, and I brought a box of Power Ranger cards from like 1994. And, I was 7 at the time, right? I watched Power Rangers religiously. And one of the Power Rangers were there. And sure enough, I got the box signed. So now I have a signed box of Power Ranger cards. So that was like, yeah, no doubt. That's cool, bro.
And when it comes to something like that situation, you're going to keep that box for yourself, or are you going to be looking to... Yeah.
Eventually I'll sell it, but I'm keeping it for myself.
That's cool.
I'm a collector too, you know what I mean? So ultimately, I collect things. I collect toys, I collect comics, I collect cars, as you know. So for me, it's like I love doing this stuff, And it's a lot of fun collecting, building sets. So it's just I can't even look at it as work. It's just fun.
That's very cool. Now, what is the future plan for this collectible business? Are you planning on, having a storefront potentially?
That may be a part of it. Blowing out a website, having that, up and running and going, that's going to be, a part of the game that's being worked on right now, being developed, and going from there. E-commerce, mainly, I would say, is really the bulk of it, because a storefront is cool, but a storefront, it's you got to worry about foot traffic, who comes in, who comes out. I like e-commerce.
Right. And definitely with a storefront, you know, if it was just a storefront, you're closing the door on the entire world that is your market when it comes to collectibles.
Correct.
And, you know, that's a lot of what you and I are going to be working on, is kind of trying to market these products and bring them to the world via e-commerce, you know, get the website up and going, get stuff cataloged. I'm sure that's going to take some time, a lot of time. But obviously as you're getting, you know, you're picking out these cards to get graded, you know, you're really kind of isolating the more high value items that you have. Correct. That also enables us to get that upfront cash flow moving, because we're able to kind of prioritize what we're listing and where we're listing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the cars, so I got to bring this up because I know we started working probably as soon as I got down here, so end of October maybe, and we were shooting some content for your personal brand, and you had this beautiful new truck that you had just bought.
Yes.
And you were just talking to me the other day about kind of the bar, you know. We were talking about how, you know, as you continue to set the bar higher, you know, it slowly moves towards your normal.
Yeah.
You know, so talk to me a little bit about that.
So I think what happens is, as success becomes more prominent in your life, you start to really take hold of values, right? Which is very important. And what values are actually important to you. So anybody that comes into money, the first things that they're going to do they're going to want to look presentable, right? You're going to want to be flashy. You're going to want a nice car. All these things that you think are a direct result of success or that make you look successful. And I don't have that concept. You know what I mean? I don't have that itch that needs to be scratched, per se. So as I buy these things, I realize that the excitement wears off very quickly. You know what I mean? I buy a new car, great for like 3 weeks, and then I'm like, it's a new car, who cares? You know, I buy the 53 Chevy. It's a great 53 Chevy, but I'm like, who really cares? You know, who doesn't really matter. It doesn't really do much for me. What really makes me tick is creating more income and having more freedom. That's really ultimately what gives me the drive to continue and do what I do.
I definitely resonate with that. Yeah. It's the creation of like something from nothing.
Correct.
The creation of a business.
Correct.
Growing that business out. I literally even mentioned this on the first episode of the podcast. It's just the material things, you know, to me, if you've known me long enough, you know, I'm usually just wearing my black t-shirt or whatever every single day. You know, to me, you know, there's a lot of things, material, that just don't really bring me all that much happiness. I do know when I do reach a certain level of success, I have been a watch nerd for many years. So I do know that will be one place that I might get a little materialistic.
No doubt. But you know what? And earn it, right? So that's
right.
That's the concept that I have, is earn it. And when I got to a certain point, it took me years, actually. You know, I bought this watch probably like 2-3 years in the business. It's my favorite watch. It's a Bell & Ross. You know, it's a very low-key watch. Nobody knows that it's worth anything. But this is a $5,000 watch. You know what I mean? I wear this watch every day. I love it. But at one point, I did buy a Rolex. And I bought a Submariner. And, you know, because, you know, the guys that I was around were like, come on, buy a Rolex. You know, and I'm like, you know what? Eventually, I'll buy a Rolex. And I did. And sure enough, that Rolex sits in a box and doesn't really do anything. So I wore it maybe like 3 or 4 times, and I really don't care about it.
That's funny.
Yeah, so it's like, but again, so I got to periods of time where I'm like, all right, I earned this. You know what I mean? Let me buy it because I earned it. But yeah, it doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, the minimal branding. I've always been a fan of minimal branding. Like you know, like that watch. Yeah. You're gonna walk around, and if somebody isn't familiar with that brand or knows watches really well, they're gonna have no idea what that is.
Correct.
And that is very cool to me because it's you know, you didn't buy it to impress or change the perceptions of everyone Correct. You come into contact with. You bought it for yourself.
Correct.
Similarly with, and I feel like you bought that truck for yourself. I mean,
oh, no
you
doubt.
know, it was so,
no
it
doubt.
was very
it was
cool.
at a point in time where I'm like, you know, I moved down here, you know, life is good. I can't complain. And I always wanted a muscle car, but you know, since I've been down here, I got 2 speeding tickets. So I'm like, I'm not getting a muscle car because that's just going to add more to me. You know what I mean? Attract more. And if you have a muscle car, you're going to want to drive it. So I'm not, you know, I'm not going to do that. So I bought a truck instead. And it's a great truck. I love it. You know, it's a head turner. Everybody loves it. Anybody that I drive by, you know, they're like, oh my God, that's a great truck. But again, at the same time, I'm like, whatever, that's cool.
I remember you and I that night shooting that content. We were driving down the Myrtle Beach Strip because I had never been on the Strip before. You were like, fuck it, let's go. Like, you got to see this. And then we just were rolling through it, heavy traffic, so we were moving slow. But, you know, you were catching eyes from everybody and their sister.
People beeping. Yeah, just that truck, you know, brings eyes to it right away. You know, and cool. It's a great truck. You know, it's cool to look at. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, whatever, cool. You know.
What was the last time you drove it?
Actually, I drove it the other day.
There we go.
Because it wasn't driven. So I'm like, yo, let me drive this truck because it's sitting there and it's, you know, not doing anything. Let me just take them out, you know, and I took it out.
You still at the second house or you got at your?
Yeah.
Okay. That's very cool. Where did you end up buying that out of? Did you buy it local or?
No, so I had a friend of mine basically. The story behind that truck was years ago, I linked up with this guy, I worked with him for a little bit, and he had classic cars. And he let me drive. And when I drove the truck, which I have now, I fell in love. And at the time, he was selling it, but I didn't have the money to buy it. And sure enough, years later, when I moved down here, I linked up with him on Facebook, and I said, hey, do you have any cars for sale? And he's like, yeah, I do. I got the truck that you love. And sure enough, I'm like, how much? He's like, he gave me a price. I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. And I wired him the money the next day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He deliver it to you?
Yeah.
That's
cool. He actually said to the guy who delivered it, he's like, yo, I can't believe this kid just wired me money. But I was like, yo, I want it, so just send it, you know? It was cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the gym, because I know that you're avid into fitness, have been for pretty much your entire life.
Correct.
What role does that play in just your life in general, as well as how do you feel that translates into business?
So the gym is significant in my life, and significant in the sense that it's the discipline that's a part of the success. And even when I'm not feeling good, I hit the gym. Religiously, I hit the gym. And I could be fat and hit the gym. You know what I mean? But the point of it all is doing something that I have that consistency level with, right? No matter what goes on in my life, I'm always consistent. Now, I'm sure everybody can gather just by me talking, I'm a high-strung guy. I'm a high-energy guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, let's go, move. So I need things that counteract that kind of bring me down, that I can get that aggression out, that I don't take it out in other means. You know what I mean? So the gym has always been that avenue to give me that mental peace that I need to get through my day.
What kind of training have you done over the span of your life?
Martial arts.
Okay.
Muay Thai, kickboxing is something that I enjoy a lot. Boxing in general is something I enjoy a lot. And the gym.
That's very cool. What attracts you to the? Have you boxed in a while or done any of the martial arts?
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
What drew you to that?
Oh, it's just fun. It's fun. You realize, see, the thing about martial arts, there's a level of humility that comes with it, right? And when someone knows how to defend themselves, they're less inclined to be aggressive, right? You don't want to be. You don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to go through life hurting people. That's not fun. It's not cool. And when you train martial arts, you realize, one, you get your ass kicked a lot. And two, is it develops that sense of peace in yourself, right? It gives you that level of confidence to go about your life. Because now you're less apprehensive about things that go on around you. You know what I mean? You're less inclined to go at life with a sense of fear, right? Because now you have that confidence. That's what martial arts does for me. You know, it just develops a peace in me. And I enjoy hitting people and getting hit. You know, it's just something that I have a lot of fun doing.
I take you as the kind of guy that enjoys the getting hit just as much.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Anybody that's trained martial arts with me will tell you. Yeah. Sometimes I'll give you a freebie just to feel it.
There's that little sick, twisted part. I can definitely.
I remember I was sparring, and it was probably about like my 7th round sparring. And I was going at it with this young kid in his 20s, and I was yoking him. I was hitting him and almost knocked him out. But then I jumped up and I opened up my ribs, and you know, he gave me a shot to my ribs that I thought broke my ribs. I mean, I was like, wow. And I still kept fighting, you know. I still kept going. Even though I felt like my ribs were broken, I kept going. And I remember going home that night, laying in bed, and I could only lay like coffin style. You know what I mean? I couldn't move left. I couldn't move right. And my wife comes in at the time, and she's like, you fucking idiot. But, you know, it's something that I have a great deal of fun doing.
And so how do you feel? Because I know for me personally, you know, working out has always been a staple of my life as well.
Yeah.
For the greater part of the last 8 years of my life, and, you know, just being active in general my whole life. But, you know, lifting, you know, strength training, things of that nature have always played a role, and I feel directly correlate into business and being successful as an entrepreneur. It's that discipline.
So I'm competitive, right? I'm a competitive person. Just by nature, I'm competitive. If you play video games with me, I'm competitive. You know, whatever we do, I want to win. Ultimately, I want to win. I want to be the best at. And so that plays a major role and translates into business, because when it comes to business, I'm going to be successful regardless. I'm going to find a way to be successful. And so the way that I've come up is, like, my approach is get things done and we'll worry about the details later. You know what I mean? Like, let's just get the bulk of shit done and run through it, and we'll figure out the details later. And I think a lot of people, you know, to no fault of their own, tend to think that perfection translates to success. And that's not the case at all. You know what I mean? Like, they need to make everything perfect to showcase it, to be successful. And that's not what it is. You know what I mean? Success is a lot of mistakes along the way, and a lot of things that you learn as you go. So there is no perfection. You know, you are going to make mistakes. And so that's what I've learned, is to just get shit done, and then I'll fill in the details later.
Win or loss, done is better than perfect every single time.
100%. Yeah.
You know, you lose, lesson learned.
Yeah.
If you win, great.
Yeah.
Lesson learned. Keep moving.
Yeah.
Keep moving in that direction. You know, you learned what works. So I definitely agree with that. You know, the discipline component comes in because, you know, a lot of times in the entrepreneurial side of things, you know, you have to be able to motivate yourself.
Correct.
If I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like going to work, there's nobody that's going to drag me to work.
Correct.
I have to be accountable to myself. I have to have the discipline to show up even when I don't want to show up. And there's a lot of days. There's a lot of days. And it kind of comes in chapters for me. Like, there will be a long season of it's just all I'm thinking about is work, and I just want to be there all the time. And then there might be, you know, a week or two where I'm just feeling kind of off. I'm like, fuck this. But it's really about, like, those are the days when you still show up and you still put in the work. Those are the days that reign true. Those are the days that really mold you into the person that you're going to be.
Correct. So, again, right, I'm self-employed. I work for myself. I don't work for anybody. And it's been like that for a long time. Like you said, nobody tells me what to do. I wake up when I want to. I go to bed when I want to. You know what I mean? Ultimately, life is at my behest, right? And what I do translates into what I get. So if I wake up and I say I don't want to work today, I don't work. You know what I mean? But the reality is as an entrepreneur, as a self-employed person, those are the challenges that you're going to face. I'm a self-motivated person. I motivate myself. There's nobody that comes in and really gets me going. I do it for other guys. Like, there are many other guys that call me on a daily basis just to get them riled up, because I have that nature. I have that in me. You know, like, even when I had a large crew of guys and I was running my business, I would have meetings and I would amp them up. And I'd say, all right, these are the numbers we need to hit. This is what we're going to do. And I would lay it out, and that's how we would go. But I do that to myself. You know, I rile up myself. I get myself going. I have a number in my head that I have to make. Boom, I make the number. I'm chill and call it a day.
On those days that, you know, you just feel like shit, what is your approach to bringing yourself back on track? Is it do it anyways, just kind of drive, push on through the day, or do you take a step back and take a moment to recoup? What's your approach?
Okay, so I've learned that it's okay to take a step back and to recoup. I've learned that. At the same time, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because if you don't, and you get accustomed to, I don't feel good, I'm not going to do something, that's the way that it's going to translate into everything in your life. So when you feel, tired and you're, lethargic and you don't feel good, you're going to stop, and it's going to be a problem.
Jocko Willink?
Yes.
I know he says, when he's having a real bad day and he just genuinely doesn't want to do it, it's just, I'm going to do it now. Yeah. I'm not going to quit this time.
Correct.
And then he'll give himself a break the next day. Yeah. Which I'm sure for Jocko is very rare. Breaks in general.
See, look what he just did, and I'll touch basically on what we were touching on earlier. Same thing, right? Keep it in the day. I'll quit tomorrow. Go about that every day. I'll quit tomorrow. Because eventually you're going to succeed and you say, I'm not quitting. But if you have that mentality or something's bothering you, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Just do what you need to do today.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
It's been awesome having you on. You will be coming back on.
Thank you.
I'm sure the audience is going to request it.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm having you on anyways. Okay. Fuck them.
No doubt. No doubt.
But we've got some things we're working on together.
Yes. So real quick, can we plug that?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, right now, what we're working on is the personal brand. Basically, teaching people how to become successful, the means and the ideas necessary. The attitudes and behaviors necessary to become successful. Will gladly do that for free for people to help them out. Anybody that needs motivation, that's looking for a business guidance, I'm here. And then also basically the trading cards. Getting that trading card business successful, up and running, and blowing it out.
And what's your handle on Instagram where people can find you at?
Yeah, so Jason Sullivan _22 is my personal, and then Flash Point Collectibles is my business.
And people are going to be seeing some new content we're going to be rolling out here very shortly.
Right now, there's nothing on there. It's just, it's empty, but that new content will be coming soon.
We're starting from scratch. Yes, sir. There's going to be a lot of content from this podcast, and I know we still have that stockpile we shot before. So some very heavy-hitting content too, really just not what you see a lot of these influencers, personal brands are about, just kind of me.
Correct.
I genuinely believe that, and that's why I love working with you. Your content is all about other people and sharing your experiences in a way that it can maybe help someone in a certain circumstance.
So I'll say this before I go is one thing that I do enjoy, one thing that I thrive on and love is watching people become successful. And it's not intimidating to me. Doesn't develop insecurity. I love helping people become successful. I want to create more millionaires and, get them out there and teach people how to do this because it's possible. If I can do it, coming from the background that I come from, I say to myself that anybody can do it. So, yeah, I'm more than willing to help anybody that needs it. If you want to reach out, shoot me an email, whatever the case may be, just let me know.
I can vouch for that firsthand because, you have helped me immensely just in the few occurrences that we've been able to kind of spend some time together. I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. And now it's good to know you're watching me now because,
The heat is on, bro.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Keep it under my ass.
Yeah, the heat is on.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on once again. We're going to be launching this. This is going to be going live next week. I'm very excited. And we're ready to rock and roll. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll catch you all on the next episode. That was perfect timing.